Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be bringing you a tour of what is in the Age of Iron and Rust expansion for A Time of Crisis, plus a tutorial for the solo bots. This is one of those expansions that comes in a plastic bag, and I now just keep everything in the base box, but I'm going to show you what's in the Iron and Rust expansion and talk to you about what all of this stuff can do for your game. So basically the Iron and Rust expansion added three things. It added a whole new set of cards, which is super exciting. It makes it worth it regardless of whether you tend to use the bots or not. It includes rules for being different types of Roman emperors. So if you thought that being the emperor was exciting before, you now have options for how you might like to rule, and that's pretty awesome. And the third thing is a selection of solo bots that allow you to create a 4-player game even if there's only one human involved. And showing you how that works is going to be the last part of this tutorial. For now, let's start with the new cards because they are pretty exciting. The Age of Iron and Rust expansion doubles the number of cards that are available in the base game. So where you had one option each before for a red 2, 3, and 4, a blue 2, 3, and 4, and a yellow 2, 3, and 4, now you have 2 options for each of those card values. How you want to use those cards is up to you. You are allowed to just mix everything in together. So I just like to have a giant market with everything available because that's how I like to roll. You can choose to use the cards from just the base game or just the expansion, or there are rules in the rulebook for randomizing what is available. So if you want a special random card market, then that's also an option for you. But let's go ahead and talk through the events that are on the cards. Our red 2 event option used to be a Castra, and that lets you place a camp in a province that, gives you a little bit of advantage in battle if another player decides to attack you during their turn. In Iron and Rust, you get a cavalry. What the cavalry does is if you declare you're using this event, when you initiate battle, ties will be decided in favor of you, the attacker, instead of the defender. Winning a battle in Time of Crisis is based on who gets the most hits, and if you have a tie, the tie will go to the defender, unless you have a cavalry, and sometimes that makes all the difference. The event on our red 3 card from the base game was Flanking Maneuver, and basically if you declared that you were using the event, you had the option to re-roll your dice if you didn't like your roll the first time around. The red 3 in Iron and Rust is absolutely fascinating because it is a force march, and it really changes some of the strategic makeup of the game. Basically, if you use this event, it lets you perform one additional move army without having to spend more points, or you can do an extra initiate battle action at normal cost. And what makes this an interesting card is that initially each army was allowed to attack only once, so you could only initiate battle one time per army in the game. But with a force march, you can do a little extra. You can overclock your best army. The Praetorian Guard from the base game is our red 4 event, and it lets you attempt to place governor action in Italia, thus making you emperor by using military influence and ignoring that whole voting thing. Our new red 4 is pretty awesome. It's called Spiculum, which basically means like little spike, little pointy thing. And it essentially represents firing some weapons at an army before you engage in a real battle. It just adds an extra 2d6 to your roll when you are initiating battle. And that can really be great. So the options in just the red cards alone are tremendously expanded. Now for the blue cards. In the base game, we had a tribute card that was awesome because it lets you flip all the barbarians of one tribe in one province over to their inactive side. So if you need to buy some time before you can defeat them and you didn't want to lose support in your province, this is a great card. The blue 2 event in Iron and Rust is Princeps Senatus. And this one is awesome because if you don't spend the 2 political points on this card taking Senate actions, then you can spend those points as extra political points during the card buy round instead. So it inflates the amount of currency you have to spend on cards at the end of the round. The base game 3 card is called Foederati, and this one allows you to recruit barbarians to your army if they were in neighboring regions. Now you have a blue 3 option called Frumentarii, and what this one does is buy you time. In a base game of Time of Crisis, you are constantly on tenterhooks when you pick your next hand because you don't actually know what the other players will do. And if somebody might attack you, you prepare for that. But then if they don't, then you have these cards that you don't know how to spend because you're preparing for an attack. What Frumentarii does is it allows you to delay choosing 2 of the cards in your next hand until it's your turn again. So you can wait and see what everybody else does and then pick part of your hand for your turn. Nasty. Our blue 4 event is Damnatio Memoriae, And this one allows you to push the legacy of an outgoing emperor down when you are the incoming emperor. So you become emperor and you are kicking the other guy while he's down. This card, however, is not the same card that's in the base game. The balance on Damnatio Memoriae was adjusted for the expansion. So there are expansion cards that are still Damnatio Memoriae cards, but they take out the option to add mobs to other provinces. Don't worry too much though, you'll always be able to tell the cards apart. Expansion number 1 is printed in the top right corner of this card, and this is true for all other expansion cards, so if you need to separate things back out for some reason, you will be able to. Our other blue 4 event option is Triumph. So you can play this one after you win a battle against a barbarian army, and it gives you bonus legacy equal to the number of barbarian counters removed. So basically, you already got some legacy based on removing barbarian counters in battle, but this gives you even more. So you did the big win, and then you went home and you gloried in it and got even more public acclaim for it. And now onto the yellow cards, there's some thrilling options here as well. Originally in the base game, we had the Quaestor, who you could place in one of your provinces, and he would essentially help you in a vote if somebody wanted to replace you as governor. Now your other yellow 2 event option is Ambitus, and this is an event you need to play before you attempt to place governor action. This one will add 1 to the number of votes you get from rolling the dice. So while the Quaestor is more defensive, the Ambitus is more offensive and allows you to get an extra vote when you're going for somebody else's province. Our original yellow 3 was a mob, and this was always fun because you get to place a mob in somebody else's province and make trouble. Ha ha ha. Now we have a mobile Vulgus. So the Vulgus just means like the people. It's where the word vulgar comes from, and also Vulgate, since that was the Bible for the people. But this one basically lets you kick out another governor from somebody else's regime. So this one says, select a province. Any number of times during this turn, you can spend populist influence equal to its current support level, plus the number of the governor's friendly units in the capital to reduce that support level by 1. And then if you can reduce that to 0, you get to replace the governor with a neutral governor. So instead of just putting mobs in and hoping they do their random nasty stuff, you can use a mobile Vulgus to do targeted impeachment, basically. And then our yellow 4 is the classic Pretender. If you want to go for the Pretender strategy in this game, you must get this card. It lets you set up your own little empire within an empire and make trouble. But there are multiple ways to make trouble with the people. And now you have the option because Age of Iron and Rust adds the Demagogue. And the Demagogue is quite interactive. So in this one, each other player must simultaneously reveal 1 card from his hand and return that card to his available pile. For each player who reveals a card of value 1, you can place a mob token in a province governed by that player. So what this one does is it lets you force your opponents to make an unpleasant choice. They can either sacrifice one of their juicy cards that they saved up for next turn, or they can dump a 1, which is just less damaging, but they get a mob in exchange for that. So either way, when you play the Demagogue, you kind of win. So as you can see, what was already a pretty exciting game is now more exciting because there are different options for the actions. And that's going to change your strategies. It's going to change the things you need to look out for in this game. And I think that just makes everything a bit juicier, more fun. All right, the big map is back out. Please pardon my card market over here. My table cannot handle all this massive Roman awesomeness. So the second module added in the Age of Iron and Rust expansion is the optional Emperor rules. So if you recall, you become Emperor by becoming Governor of Italia and hanging on as Governor of Italia. That is still true. That does not change. However, in the base game, you basically just become Emperor of Italia and sit there and try to hang on. The other provinces that you hold are really just there to help you maintain some support in the main province of Italia. You can still be the base game kind of emperor using the rules for the Age of Iron and Rust expansion, but this expansion also gives you a couple more options. So if you choose to be a standard Senate emperor, you're going to gain legacy the exact way that you did before. So you get legacy equal to the support level of Italia minus the number of Pretender provinces. In Age of Iron and Rust, you're also going to get a special advantage, and that means that no one can target you with a Damnatio Memoriae event when you are eventually replaced as emperor, because usually it's a when, not an if. So because you were stationed in Italy and you had a lot of favor at the Senate, they're not going to poop on your name after you get kicked out of office. However, especially in this period of time, not all Roman emperors ruled that way. You didn't just go to Rome and hang out, there were other options. And what's so cool about this expansion is that it helps to model that. So your second option is to be a populist emperor. Basically what this means is that you became popular in your home province that you've just made your special center of your kingdom. So yeah, you're the governor of Italia, But maybe Gallia is really your true center of power, and that's where you'd like to spend most of your time. So when you become the governor of Italia, you declare yourself a populous emperor, and that essentially means that you're set up in your favorite province instead. So this changes the center of your power, and it also changes the way that you gain legacy during the legacy phase of your turn. A Senate emperor is going to gain legacy equal to twice the support level of Italy. But if you're a populous emperor, you're going to gain legacy equal to twice the support level of the province where you put your emperor token, minus the number of pretender provinces. So you get a special advantage for this. Basically, the people love you. You're the people's emperor. So you can't actually get targeted with any mob events. And at the moment you become emperor, you can remove all the mob events that did exist in your provinces from those provinces. So that is seriously awesome. However, there are also disadvantages to choosing to be a populous emperor. The Senate in Italia is mad that you abandoned them and acted like some other province was better. And so when someone tries to replace you in Italia, they're going to add 2 to the number of votes that they gain from rolling dice to kick you out. So it's a lot easier to lose Italia if you're not there. The other thing that it changes is that you are more easily removed, because if you get kicked out of Italia or out of your chosen province to govern, either one of those removals will demote you from the role of emperor. So here's where things get pretty fun. In my hand, I've got 2 emperor tokens. This is the one that you're going to use if you're a Senate or a populous emperor. So you'll either put this in Italia, where you would put a governor on the support track, or you put this in your province of choice. This, however, is a military emperor, and that's who we're about to talk about. So a Senate emperor is going to go in the support track like normal, either in Italia because you are a Senate emperor, or in a province of your choice because you are a populous emperor. So it's going to be clear to you and everybody else where you have chosen to place your true seat of power. Rome at this time, however, was also very fond of soldier emperors, and so you also have this military option. It's the same shape as a general token instead of a governor. So when you place your military emperor, you're going to place him with one of your current generals. So let's say that I've got a monster army going on in Thracia. I'm going to put my emperor token here with this general. And then my fate is going to rise or fall with that army. If you're planning to fight a lot while you are the emperor, this is actually amazing, because when you gain legacy, you're going to double all legacy for each battle that you win with the army your emperor is placed with. So instead of having your bonus legacy based on the support in your chosen province, it's based on how much winning you manage to do before your emperor is inevitably destroyed. But if you have a lot of cleanup to do and you can become emperor, this is an advantageous choice. When you're getting your emperor legacy, you do still have to subtract legacy equal to the number of pretender provinces. We cannot tolerate any pretenders, even if we swear we're going to beat them next turn. As a military emperor, you're going to have a couple of special advantages. One is that you cannot be targeted by the Praetorian Guard event. So no military takeovers for you, the soldiers like you, at least for now. However, you do have a special disadvantage, and that is that you are leading your legions in the field and therefore can die in battle. This adds a couple of extra steps to battle. The most upsetting one is that for each hit that an opponent deals to the Emperor's army, your opponent gets to roll an extra d6. And if they get a 5 or 6 on one of those dice, then your Emperor is going to die in battle. In other words, it is super easy for your military Emperor to die. Your Emperor will also be eliminated if all of the units in his army are eliminated too. So if the army gets wiped out, you can assume the Emperor has also died. As usual, you can also lose your spot as Emperor if someone performs a successful place governor action in Italia. So there's 2 ways to get kicked out. If you're a populous emperor, so somebody takes over Italia or your favorite province. And there's also 2 ways to kick you out if you're a military emperor, because they can either just kill you or do the political thing. Having these other options, however, is awesome, because it just gives you so much more flexibility in how you want to play, and it lets you use your time as emperor to the best of your ability. Because sometimes you become emperor at a time where you don't think you can hold on for very long, so these new rules give you the chance to make the smartest choice that you can in the moment to make the most out of your time as the leader of the empire. And now, at last, it's time to talk about the third major thing that the Iron and Rust expansion adds to Time of Crisis, and that is the solo bots. There are 3 of them, and they play a little bit differently, while also being shockingly easy to manage. So we're going to walk through these bots, who they are, what they do, and then we're going to do the sample turns in the rulebook so you can see them in action. So the first bot I have here on the pile is Pupienus and Balbinus. Yes, it is pronounced Pupienus. It's probably a good thing that the Romans didn't know that was funny. But these are basically two old dudes that were popular with the Senate until they weren't, because they got assassinated. So this bot prefers Senate influence. You don't have to play with any of the additional stuff in Iron and Rust. So you can ignore the special Emperor rules. You can play with just the cards in the base game. There's no requirement to fit in extra rules that you don't want. But the bots will make everything possible for you, and they are going to prioritize certain types of actions over others. So Pupienus and Balbinus are the Senate influence bot. Our next bot is our military emperor. This is Maximinus Thrax. He is a soldier emperor who was out campaigning. He was very militaristic, and then things just got so out of control that his own army killed him because they got sick of it. But hey, for now, you can have Maximinus Thrax as one of your opponents on the board. And then our third opponent is Gordian III. We're going to have him as the populous emperor. And as it says in his card, he was only 13 years old when the Senate appointed him Caesar. And that's because there's a lot of mob support for him. So think of him as like an emperor influencer, and you've got a sense of Gordian. This game is fun because it has little touches like this little bust of him. You can tell he looks like a little kid, especially compared to the more grizzled Maximinus Thrax, who we just talked about. In addition to the actual bot sheets, you also have this very helpful AI guidelines pamphlet. This is going to tell you how the AI plays events from the cards. So they do play events that is built into the bots, but because we are dealing with an automated opponent, we need a little bit of guidance on how to actually play those events in a way that makes sense. Inside, we also have some very helpful information. This is the AI action priority list, and this is essentially the flow chart. So if you think about a coin game and all the different little charts they're in, this is just one priority list that's going to work for all of your AI, and that's super helpful. Basically, you start at number 1 on the list and you work your way down. A lot of possibilities will automatically exclude themselves because the AI is not always going to be emperor. There are different point colors being spent in different sections, so you can just look at what's possible. But you just work your way down the list and figure out the first thing that applies to the bot that you are moving for at a given time. And then over here you have these AI military guidelines. These are nice because these give you some guidance on where the AI is going to move and initiate battle. There are lots of fighting options in this game, but because you're controlling a bot, you need a little bit of automation to that. So these guidelines will be there to help you. Then you have this influence card in the back, and it just describes what happens when an influence card is played. It's a nice little cheat sheet. And it includes events from both the base game and the expansion. So it's a entirely useful reference card. All right, so I'm gonna get set up. I'm gonna have these guys off to the side, but ready to bring on screen to walk you through some AI turns. We're gonna start a fake 4-player game that mirrors the one in the GMT book. So as you can see, the board looks like a pretty typical 4-player game is about to be played, and that is mostly true. All of our scoring tokens are set up. We got all the neutral governors out, Italian support at 8, barbarians in their homelands, and the AI and we set up exactly the same. So governor in the 1 spot, your at-start governor, and then your at-start general with 1 legion and 1 militia in the capital of the province where you begin. The other thing to note is that the AI gets to select provinces first, and they have an order in which they'll do that. So the first to choose, which in this case is Maximinus Thrax, will take Gallia. The second will take Macedonia. So in this case, Pupienus and Balbinus are in Macedonia. And then Gordian took Syria third because that's third on the list in the rulebook. I, the human player in green, have taken Galatia to start with. Your AI opponents have a mostly normal turn, including a crisis roll, but I'm not actually going to roll the dice this video just to kind of keep things quick. If you want to actually see the crisis die rolls, check the sample play from my video about the base game, which is linked in the show notes. All right, so let's get Maximinus Thrax ready to party. The way you set up one of these sheets is that you put a pawn in the 0 marker on each one, and you also need these 3 available cylinders. We've also got a little Maximinus Thrax piece up here that we're going to use to mark what mode we're playing in. For each AI turn, you're going to decide what mode they're playing in. And this part of the flow sheet is what helps you make that decision. So if there's 2 cylinders in the 0 box, you're going to go to mode 4. If AI is not Emperor and has 50+ legacy, if you have troubled provinces, if you have mobs in your governed provinces, or if none of the above. And these are determining what mode you're in. So none of the above is mode 1. So Thrax will be playing in mode 1 this turn. That means that his primary area of points that he's going to be going for is his Senate points. Secondary is military. So he's a military governor, but that doesn't mean that that's all he does. So to mark his primary and secondary points, he will take his blue, because that's his primary this time, and put it on the top box under the Senate influence pawn. Then we're going to take the red cylinder and put it in the second box under the military influence pawn. So primary, secondary. Then we know that he's got 3 points for Senate influence. We're going to put that over here on the 3 on the influence point track. And then we're going to take the 2 and do the same thing. So he has 3 Senate points and 2 military points to spend this turn, and we're going to determine how he's going to spend those using a flowchart. When he gets political points later in the turn, that's what the bots use to go up along this track. So they grow in certain areas depending on the AI flow, and then they take more points in those areas in the future. So their deck grows, but you don't actually have to deal with any cards to help stimulate that, which I think is really cool. So let's zoom out so you can see what Thrax is up to. I'm going to put his board over here because he's not actually doing anything over here this turn, so it can just float. So on Thrax's turn 1, we're going to pretend that he rolled a crisis roll and he activated a nomad, but there was no invasion, so nothing to worry about yet. So now we're in actions and we're going to spend his points. The way that you decide how to spend points is by looking at the AI action priority list. So let's take a closer look at that. So basically you start at the top of the chart and move down until something works. So do we need to defend any governed provinces? No, there's nothing to defend from. So 1 and 2 are automatically out. Then we get to 3. If the AI has no governor in its available leaders box, then we need to recruit a governor for the lowest cost governor we can afford, or recall one from a province that will lose this turn if necessary. So we want to take over some more territory, we need a governor, and that's easy to do. That means that Thrax is going to spend 1 of his blue points to recruit his lowest cost governor. So here's his red governor. I will put it in the available leaders box. When you go to step 4 on the flowchart, it gives you a sense of priority for where the AI might choose to place a governor they've recruited. A lot of it has to do with provinces that are troubled or with trying to take over Italia, which he just can't do right now. So what instead he's going to do is he's going to place a governor in one of the neutral provinces that's around him. And if everything's pretty much the same, the player gets to decide. So for the purposes of this simulation, we're putting a new governor in Hispania. So now Thrax has taken over Hispania. The support in Italy is going to drop by 1, and it cost him his 2 points to do that. If you watched my last video, you'll notice that in the practice play, we did things like Hail Mary rolls just to see if we could take over a province, but the AI is actually never going to do that. They have to be able to get the minimum votes necessary to take over. So in the case of a neutral governor, we know we're going to get it. He had 2 points, 2 votes, bam. But the AI is never going to play risky the way that a human would, depending on exploding dice or anything like that. Now we have 2 military points to spend, and let's look at the flowchart for that. So basically, we've started down this chart. We're just going to continue where we left off. 9 is about training legions. We don't have any damage ones, so whatever. 10 and 11 are both about the AI being emperor. 12 is about an opposing player being emperor, also not the case right now. But if you go to 13, add legion to the army with the fewest legions, and then determine if the AI will attack Italia. It won't because it's too small right now, but we can add a legion. So we can pay 2 points to add a legion to our army in Gallia. So that is all of Max Thrax's points, and it's time to move into the bottom of the round. We don't need to worry about a support check or a pretender emperor check, so we're just going to take our legacy points. We have 2 provinces. We'll take 2 points. And then we also have 2 political points to spend. We have 1 support in Hispania and 1 in Gallia for 2. So the way that works is that you would think that he would prioritize military influence, and normally that's what he would buy first. But if you have 0 Senate influence and you are a bot, that's the first thing you're going to buy. So he's going to spend his 2 political points on Senate influence. And that was basically his buy and trash cards phase. There's nothing to clean up, and Maximize Thrax is done. So let's take a look at the second bot turn. So our next bot to take a turn is the Pupienus and Balbinus bot. So we're going to pretend that they rolled Crisis and that they activated a Frank, but that there was no invasion. They're also going to put their mode marker into box 1 because the mode chart is the same for all bots. So none of these other ones apply. Mode 1 is if none of the above, so that's where they're going to go. Like Maximize Thrax, their mode 1 primary is Senate, and their secondary is the military. So that means that we're going to allocate their points in the same way. They're also going to do essentially the same thing. So first they are going to recruit their cheapest governor, obviously, And then they're going to spend their 2 points to take out an easy prey neutral governor. So in this case, they are going to move into Thracia and knock out that governor there. This is going to cause a decrease in support in Italy, once again. And then to spend our 2 points, the next thing on the flowchart is going to be grow our army by a legion. So we're going to take this legion, and we're going to put it on our army. Easy as pie. Now that all of our points are spent, no support or pretender emperor issues, we're just going to take 2 legacy points for our 2 provinces. And then we're also going to spend 2 political points. Once again, we'll spend them on Senate too, because our Senate pawn was at 0. That happens to be preferred for Pupienus and Balbinus. That's not really the point. And then that was their turn. Once you know what you're doing, this gets a lot faster. Now we're ready to play with little babyface Gordian, and he's going to have a little crisis roll that activates an Alemanni. But none will invade. Like the others, his mode marker is going to go to 1, because again, it's the same chart. But things are a little different for him. His primary is blue. His secondary is yellow. So we're going to go here on the yellow. So he's going to have 2 yellow points to spend, and he's going to have 3 blue ones. He's going to do something pretty similar to the others in that we are going to have him pay 1 to recruit his cheapy governor. And then we are going to spend 2 to have him take over a neighboring province, in this case, Aegyptus or Egypt. Then support in Italy is going to drop by yet another spot. Somebody's going to try to be emperor soon. Then we get to decide what to do with these yellow points. And for that, we're going to turn to our handy dandy flowchart. So if you go to the flowchart, all the bottom actions are populace related. 19 involves troubled provinces, so it's out. 20 involves mobs, also out. 21, increase support in a governed province with lowest support. Yes, we have 2 points, and that's enough to raise support in one of our provinces. But which one? Between the rulebook and the flowchart, you have to look enough to make some decisions about how you should increase the support or do anything else really. Deciding the AI's priorities is partially flowchart and then partially your judgment. But in this case, Aegyptus has no army, it's undefended, so this is where we're going to go for some support. And we're going to spend both of our points to do so. Those are all of our actions used up. So now Gordian doesn't have any support checks or anything to worry about. He's going to get 2 legacy. And he actually has 3 political points, 1, 2, 3, but he's just going to spend 2 of them on a Senate influence. So as you can see, these turns can feel a little bit samey at the beginning, but you'll be surprised at how much they start to differentiate. And you'll also be relieved that they use the same flowchart for all 3 of these guys, because it helps you remember what you're supposed to do. So they have some differentiation, but it is not hard to do that differentiation, which is something that's really impressive actually. The other complexity that's going to appear soon is the AI can in fact play events. So you'll note the point numbers next to each square on our flowchart, but there's also smaller circles with numbers in them. So this 2 in the blue circle means that if Gordian's cylinder comes here on a future turn, he's also going to take a 2-point event from one of the blue events. And you can either play with one set of cards or the other, or you can make that decision randomly. You can either try to decide what's best for the AI yourself, or you can roll a die and just say 1 to 3 is the base game and 4 to 6 is the Iron and Rust expansion. So you have a lot of choices in terms of how you want to run the AI. Choose what you like. You're not going to break it. All right, so now it's my turn, and it's going to look kind of a lot like the bot turn, actually. But first I'm going to have a fake roll. I'm going to roll and activate an Alemanni. And then I'm going to roll again, and 1 will invade Thracia. So we've got some barbarian movement going on. Now it's my turn. I'm going to do something similar to the bots. I'm going to play 1 to recruit my cheapest governor, and then 2 to replace the neutral governor in Asia with him. That's going to put support in Italia down to 4, so it's looking pretty gnarly over there, but that's not my concern. Unlike the bots who chose to bulk out the armies they already had, I'm going to spend 1 of my military influence to summon my 1-point general. I'm going to spend a second one to start an army in Asia. So that means 1 legion, 1 general. Those are all my actions used up. I don't need to do any support or pretender checks. I will get 2 legacy. And I'm also going to get 2 political points to spend, which I'm going to spend on a card. So the bots don't have cards, but I do on a person. So I'm going to purchase a tribute card, And then I'm going to set up my hand for next turn. This is my discard pile, but when you draw back up to 5, as it happens, I only have 4 cards right now. I need to pick a 5th, and it's going to come from my discard, and I get to choose. So I got 3 yellow, 1 red, and kind of to make the most out of that, I'm going to take another red 1. So that'll be my next turn. So with all of that finished, we're ready to come back around and have bot turn 2, and that will end this video. All right, so our boy Max Thrax is here and ready to go. He's going to be in mode 4 this time. The reason for that is the chart says, if there are 2 cylinders in the 0-point box on the influence point track, which there are, then you will do mode 4. So this is the available cylinder for him. So this will be his primary, yellow. His secondary is going to be military because that's his fave, and that'll come here. So we know that he's going to have 2 military points and 3 populous points to spend. But first things first, he has to do a crisis roll. So he's going to activate a nomad. We're going to say that nothing happened. Again, normally you would roll, but this is from the GMT rulebook. So we're going to figure out what's going to happen by referring to, again, our flow chart. So we have this flow chart. 1 and 2 are out. There will not be any AI attacks or anything like that. All these steps about placing a governor have no relevance at all because we have no political points, so no. Build military strength. We don't have any injured legions. Nobody is emperor. There's no opposing emperor. And we can't add a legion this time because that's too expensive. We only have 2 military points and it would cost 3. So we go to step 14. If the AI has no general in its available leaders box, we're going to recruit one for the lowest cost that we can afford. So we're going to buy our 1-point general and spend our point. We still have 1 more point to spend, so let's keep going on the list. Fortunately, step 15 is create an army in its governed province that has the lowest support that does not contain an army. So that means that we are going to use our newly recruited general to make an army in Hispania. So we're going to put an army right here, 1 legion, 1 available leader, and it was 1 point. Excellent. Now we're going to go down the charts to figure out what to do with Max Thrax's populous points. So we're going to go down here. Nothing's troubled. We don't need to hold games. Increase support in governed province with lowest support. Repeat a second time. So we can't repeat it a second time. We don't have enough points. But we can spend 2 of these points to increase the support in either Gallia or Hispania. So they seem equal, but they're really not. It would take fewer votes to do a hostile takeover of Hispania and replace the governor. So we're going to put our support here. There are more units in his army in Gallia. This is better protected. So we're adding support to the place that has only 1 legion in the army. Even though he has 1 more point, it just kind of gets wasted. There's nothing to buy for 1 point, and especially nothing that he needs. So everything's going to go into the 0 box. We don't need to do any support checks or anything, but we do have 2 legacy points coming in. So he's at 4 now. And we also have 3 political points to spend. 1, 2, 3. However, everything costs 2. He already bumped his Senate influence up by 1. So now that he has stuff to spend, he's going to try to spend military first. So he can bump his military pawn up by 2. That leaves 1 political point left over, but not a big deal. Max has done his thing. So that's his second bot turn. And then let's see what Pupienus and Balbinus are going to do. All right, so Pupienus and Balbinus had a similar turn to Thrax last time, but here's where you're going to start to see some minor differences. They also are going to go into mode 4. Their primary is going to be yellow, and their secondary is going to be their favorite, which is the Senate. So this will stay in the 0. They're going to have 2 Senate points and 3 populous influence to spend. They're going to have their crisis roll first, however. They're going to activate Assassinate, but nobody's going to invade. So we just have a little active Assassinate over here. Then we're just going to go down the chart and see what to do. So we don't have any military points, but if the AI has no governor in its available leaders box, recruit governor for the lowest cost governor it can afford, or recall someone from a province that'll lose this turn. So we actually can afford to recruit a governor. We have 2 political points, so we're going to spend them to bring our 2-cost governor here into the available leaders box. Can't place him yet, but now he's there. Then we're going to keep going down to figure out what to do with the populous points. So we're going to come down here. 19. Increase support in a governed, troubled, or at-risk province with a support that equals 1. And we're going to do that as many times as possible. So we govern Thracia. There's no army here. And one of the Alemanni is here and active. That's going to drop our support at the end of this round. So in order to save our skins, we're going to spend 2 of our populous points to increase our support to 2. There's nothing to do with that last point, so it's spent. And in our support check, we actually have to drop support in Thracia back down to 1, but we didn't lose governorship of this province. We still govern 2 provinces, so we're still going to get 2 legacy points. And Pupienus and Balbinus have 2 political points to spend. They've already spent it on Senate, and if they had 4 points, which is what it says right here, we would spend it on Senate again. But we can't, so we won't. Instead, we're going to spend 2 points on one of these. Basically, the tiebreaker is the one that's higher up on the flowchart, so they're going to spend it to bump their military influence to 2. There's no further cleanup to do, so all these cylinders will reset and go back to the available box. And that is the end of the Pupienus and Balbinus turn. Let's check on our boy Gordian. All right, Gordian, let's see what you can do. Gordian also is going to be in mode 4 today because he's had the same basic play out as the other 2. So his primary is going to be military, and his secondary is going to be populous because that's his favorite. So he's going to have 3 military points to spend this turn and 2 populous points. First he's going to roll, and we're going to pretend that he rolled an event. So, wow, a 7 came up. Amazing. So we're going to draw an event, and ooh, it's Shapur the First. So we get to place Shapur, the leader counter for him in the Sassanid homeland. And then he will come onto the board with the next successful Sassanid invasion. I feel bad for these Romans, but I think Shapur is cool. So there you go. All right, so now we're on Gordian's actions. He's going to do military stuff first, and we're going to use the flowchart to determine what exactly he does. As usual, we start at the top. He doesn't have anything to defend. He doesn't have any political points. Doesn't need to train. He's not emperor. No one else is emperor. Aha! 13. Add legion to the army with the fewest legions. And then determine if the AI will attack Italia, but it won't. All right, so we're going to add a legion to our army with the fewest legions. That is currently Syria. So for 2 points, because we're adding a second legion, we're going to grow the army here in Syria. We still have 1 more point to spend, though, so we're going to go back down the flowchart. We were on step 13. Now it's step 14. If the AI has no general in its available leaders box, then you recruit one for the lowest cost that you can afford. So we can't afford our 1-point general. We're going to spend our last points for military to put him in the available leaders box to use next turn, no doubt, or whenever we have military points again. After that, we're going to figure out what to do with our yellow points. So we come down here, no troubled provinces, no need to hold games. Increase support in the governed province with the lowest support. Last time we did this in Aegyptus. This time we're going to do it in Syria because that is our lowest support province. So we're going to spend our 2 points to go up. Excellent. There's no support check needed, no pretender check needed. So we're just going to gain our 2 legacy. And then Gordian actually has 4 political points because he has support 2 for 4 points. He ain't doing bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase our populous influence and our military influence. So Gordian's starting to look a little bit dangerous, especially because he's now at a point where whatever his primary is, he's going to play an event. This 2 in a red circle, 2 in a blue circle, or 2 in a yellow circle are going to become an event that he plays on his next AI turn, which is great for him. All right, so that's Gordian's last turn. We'll play 1 more human turn and we'll call it into this video. All right, so now it's the human turn. We're gonna have our little crisis roll and we're gonna pretend that we activated a nomad, but none of them invade. No nomads, they're just kind of here waiting to come in. Then let's look at our hand again. So we've got 2 red points and 3 yellow to spend. We're going to spend the 2 red points to grow our army. So in Galatia, we have 1 legion, so we can afford 2 points to add another one. So let's make our Galatian army 1 legion bigger with those points. Then we have these 3 yellow points. And we're going to go wild with them. We're going to spend those 3 points to build an improvement. So we're going to place our limes in Galatia. And what this does is when the Sassanids inevitably invade, they will have to go onto their inactive side upon crossing the limes. It buys us time because they got tired breaking through our border wall. So we don't have to do any support or pretender checks, but we're actually going to get 3 legacy for this turn now because 1 province, 2 province, and improvement. So that's 3 legacy points. That puts us up at 5. We just squeaked ahead of the competition, at least for now. We have 2 points of political influence for the 2 provinces with 1 support. We're going to spend those 2 points on a Kostra card. So this Kostra is going to go on the discard pile. However, we won't see it just yet. We have exactly 5 cards in discard right now, and so that's what we're going to draw up to since our deck will refresh. So that's going to leave us with 3 blues, another 2 for the tribute card we bought, and 1 red military point. So that is a full 2 turns with the bots. I hope that you can tell that they are fairly simple to activate and run. It's actually very pleasurable to play with all 3 of them, and you will find that they do surprising things within a very simple structure. So this is our tour of Time of Crisis, the Age of Iron and Rust expansion. I hope you'd enjoyed it. Please leave me a comment, like, and subscribe. And most of all, happy gaming.